Conversations with today's newsmakers from Michiana's Morning News.
Well, the August 31st deadline to remove U.S. troops from Afghanistan's been met, according to the Pentagon, but that does not mean that all Americans are out of that country, which is now under Taliban occupation. With us on the newsline, a 2nd District Representative Jackie Walorski. Jackie, we got a lot to ask you about. First and foremost, and I don't mean to rapid fire these questions at you, how many Americans are still there? Who are they? And what is the danger that they now face? Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks, John. Nobody knows how many Americans are there. I don't think anybody, including the State Department, knew how many were there to begin with. So that's part of the haphazardness of how this whole mission has been conducted to remove Americans from Afghanistan and from Taliban control. So I think it's anybody's guess. I've heard, like everybody else has, there's a couple of hundred Americans left, but the presumption now is those are hostages. And then, the State Department basically said when the last man left last night that, they'll continue to work to get these Americans out. But I think as we're going to see same old Taliban, you can't barter with, negotiate with, or ask for mercy from the Taliban. And that's been part of the disaster around Joe Biden as commander-in-chief, bringing pure chaos into a situation that didn't have to be so.
Now, Jackie, do you have any idea what the White House and the State Department are going to do to try to get these people out?
Well, given the fact that they turned over, really important personal data to the Taliban of Americans and Afghanis that had worked as interpreters, just totally protected data to keep our people and these interpreters safe, and that was turned over to them. They have so much information, they probably don't know what to do with it all. But just another leg of this incompetent story about why Joe Biden should resign as commander-in-chief. We are we're dealing with history here. History is going to record this. And there's just no good side of what happened. And there's no good story to tell in the future based upon the Taliban's past and the other terror groups that are now there because the Americans have pulled out.
Well, speaking of stories, I was reading yesterday as General McKenzie was on the air taking questions from reporters live. We aired it on 95.3 MNC. Some of the stories I was reading, Jackie, was about rockets, and I don't know if they were being fired in celebration of Americans leaving, but they were being lobbed at the airport as military aircraft were taking off. What are some of the stories that you're hearing? Anything like that?
Well, I heard the same stories, and that's how terrorists celebrate. They take their AR-15s and they shoot them into the air. They explode things like we would look at fireworks. This is such an characteristic of the same old Taliban, the same terrorists who have now multiplied. There are more of them. There are more names for them. But at the end of the day, our nation is very much unsafe and will be because of what just happened in Afghanistan, which I lay at the feet, including those 13 servicemen that were killed, lays right at the feet of President Biden.
Well, Jackie, in your perspective then, did America lose the war in Afghanistan?
Well, I think that, we pulled out certainly haphazardly with no plan whatsoever. I don't think there's a huge argument amongst Americans that it was time to pull out. I think the issue that's going to be recorded in history that we're going to talk about for a long time is how this was handled. It was bungled. There was no plan. It seemed to be an upside down way of handling something when you've got terrorists involved with killing Americans and the new terrorist ISIS-K that has developed over there. The huge mistakes like closing Bagram Air Force Base and, pulling our troops out before the Americans were pulled out and leaving all the weapons behind. You can pick any part of this story and realize that it was done in such an irresponsible way. It's a disgrace. And I think it's a national disgrace, and I think we're going to be talking about this for a long time because it's not over.
Well, with the Taliban in control, and of course there are other terrorist factions wrestling for power, including ISIS-K, Al-Qaeda, as we get closer to the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. And you've touched upon the danger that this has for the rest of the Western world. What is Congress's part in this and, to try to bring some peace to the world and order in regard to Afghanistan and how things go from here?
Well, the House GOP, under the direction of Kevin McCarthy, Kevin has asked Pelosi to bring the Congress back bring us back specifically to deal with this and to be able to deal with 9/11 so that we can work together and hopefully stop anything that is currently in the plan. And, she refuses to. I mean, they brought us back to vote $5 billion bill, but they don't seem to be interested in assuring the national security peace in this country from this point going forward. So, we're doing our part. I'll be there next week and for a Ways and Means Committee meeting on their $5 trillion bill. We're going to do what we can do, but we really believe that as the Speaker of the House, she should bring us back, let us work together in a bipartisan way and get this figured out to bring safety to this country. But, we're in a different world now. Everything changed this weekend and last week. The world's in a different frame, and unfortunately, we're right in that frame with everybody else, much more vulnerable to attack here on the homeland.
Well, once again, that's 2nd District Representative Jackie Walorski. You can follow her work online at walorski.house.us.gov. Thanks again, Jackie, for joining us this morning.
Thank you, guys.
Michiana's Morning News, weekdays from 5 to 9 on 95.3 Michiana's News Channel.
Podcasts by Federated Media.